What's up, guys? Zachary asks, can you make a perfect storm video? Something optimistic, like the 1% chance the Jets have as a path to the playoffs. Well, I actually think the Jets' playoff chances, I would put them at higher than 1%, lower than 50, so somewhere between 2 and 49%, higher than 1. So I have 7 things for the New York Jets that I think could, if they all break right, or if most of them break right, they could crack a wild card, which I think is a reasonable expectation sooner rather than later, like within your first 2 years, because most teams in the NFL will have made the playoffs 2 years from now. More than 50% of the teams will have made the postseason at least once, and I think the Jets should be one of those teams. I think that's fair enough, especially with that 7 seed being in there. But number one to me is, can the Jets have an average coaching staff year one? Now, obviously, you want them to be above average eventually, but rookie coaches, you look around the league and it's often they're the ones picking pretty high in the draft the next year because it's typically tethered to maybe starting over at quarterback or rebuilding roster. Obviously, the Jets are bringing in a new quarterback, but it's not a complete rebuild on the roster front. A little bit more of a retool, that middle part of the depth chart. So I would take average, like with Coach Glenn. I don't know, can he be Dan Quinn? I would love Dan Quinn. Is Dan Quinn Sean McVay? No, he's Dan Quinn. He's an adult who's won playoff games, who's shown multiple times he can hire an offensive staff. So I would love that. And hey, can he bring along Tanner Engstrand to be Cliff Kingsbury? That'd be cool. Looking at that Washington staff, I would take that 10 times out of 10. So average coaching staff, however you want to quantify it, that would be a massive improvement from this team. If you look at last year's team, if you just gave them an average coaching staff, that's probably another, maybe not playoffs, but another 2 to 3 wins, even going, not even great coaching, just average coaching, probably another 2 or 3 wins from last year. So that's the first thing. Number two, and this one is the one that takes the least amount of projection because our coaches like Glenn and Engstrand are a complete unknown at this level in their roles, right? I know Engstrand called plays before, not in the NFL. Glenn, obviously, experienced coach, but in their respective roles, they are rookies. So we don't know. But the offensive line to me is not a massive projection because last year, the passing protection was adequate. I know people beat their head against the wall for that. It's like, dude, you got to come with numbers, man, because the numbers show it was adequate. Doesn't mean every game it was perfect. Yeah, your quarterback was getting hit. But look around the league. I mean, look at when we played the Patriots offensive line that week 3 when the Jets had like 8 sacks. Dude, we've seen it. We saw it in 2023 where the offensive line was terrible. Jets offensive line was not bad last year. 5 games of Tyron Smith being kind of washed, it was pretty solid. But when they went Fashanu, Simpson, Tidman, AVT, Moses to last year, it was like top 3. That unit was top 3 in a lot of pass protection metrics. Now, you take out Moses, who, by the way, I think the Patriots are going to regret the second year of that guaranteed money for him as banged up as he is, even though he's a great dude. You plug in Armand Membu, who I think his pass protection translates quicker than his run blocking. So I think you're going to get pretty solid pass protection. I'm going to beat a dead horse with another topic of the pass protection about quarterback in a second. But we'll just staying with the offensive line for now. Pass protection should be good. Run blocking, do I think it's going to be as good as the pass pro? No, but I think it should be able to be above average because this offensive line is too talented for it not to be. Again, the Jets don't have any bad offensive linemen. I know Membu's an unknown, but it's okay to project the top 7 pick to be pretty good right away. To be pretty solid right away. Not all pro, but pretty solid. So you don't have any bad offensive linemen. Injuries, yes. No offensive line in the NFL can sustain losing 2 to 3 starters like the Jets have in the past. No team can deal with that. I saw Patrick Mahomes look like they couldn't even get first downs against the Bucs when he had his 2 tackles go down in that playoff run. Right, is what it is. Offensive line should be good. Most talented unit they've had in a decade, and that is probably besides coaching and quarterback. The next thing that's a floor-raising component of a team would be the offensive line. You look in year out, it's not a perfect science. PFF does this end-of-year offensive line ranking. Last year was the highest the Jets have finished in a long time, but they did not make the top 10 because their run scores were a lot worse than their pass scores. But within the top 10 teams that PFF does, and if you look at the teams, it'll be like, Lions, whatever. It won't be surprising names. But typically around 8 or 9 of those teams make the playoff. Right? So again, besides quarterback and coaching, probably the next thing that has the biggest correlation of your team winning games would be the offensive line unit. Now the first two things have to be high and meet a certain threshold for the offensive line to matter, of course, but you don't see horrible teams with good offensive lines pretty rarely. It's a floor raising thing. So that's number 2. We got coaching, we got offensive line. Number 3 is a Breece Hall bounce back to 2023. Now this one, again, we don't have to project it. We don't have to imagine it. We've seen it. I saw Breece Hall the first 25 games of his career average 5.0 yards per carry, be 4th in the NFL in receiving yards per game by a back. Then last year, didn't have that same gear. The elusiveness wasn't there. Mental mistakes, drops, fumbles. So I don't know what version of Breece Hall we're getting this year. To my eye, he looks about 15 pounds lighter. It's a contract year. I'm sure he's going to be motivated. If the Jets can get that version of Breece Hall, that changes the entire dynamic of the offense. When he was a player, you could dump it off to on a screen and he would go get you 40 yards. That or him being a mid back, and now you're throwing in Braylon Allen as a change of pace and Isaiah Davis. Like, it just changes your offense completely, especially with how much this team wants to run the ball. And that leads into number 4, which is be a top 5 rushing offense in the NFL. Now they're going to, I think, be up there because of volume. I mean, if Justin Fields is starting the majority of the games, they're going to be a very high rushing volume offense. There's no way around it. They were 32nd dead last in attempts last year. Part of that was, hey man, they struggled schematically. I know they were down in games, but last year they decided that running the ball was not going to be a part of their identity. It was a decision they made. They did not want to run the ball. You can still run the ball when you're down 3 points in the second quarter. The Jets threw 54 pass attempts in a 1-score loss to the Vikings to get 4.5 yards per attempt. 42 pass attempts in the pouring rain against the Denver Broncos. 1 point loss. It's not because you're down points. That's a made up excuse. It's because they didn't want to run the ball and they couldn't do it effectively. So let's actually want to. Let's start with the want to. Let's decide that running the ball is a part of the identity of the team. I think when you decide to retain Breece Hall and not trade him for whatever you can get, when you decide to draft an offensive lineman in the first round, when you decide to sign a quarterback who is one of the top 5 rushing quarterbacks in the NFL, that decision seems to be like it's already been made from the way they've constructed the roster. And the thing about it is, when you have the advantage of having a pretty high volume rushing quarterback, is it tilts up your rushing efficiency, because rushing quarterbacks always have a higher yards per attempt than number 1 running backs. For example, Justin Fields in his career has a 6.0 yards per rush average, which is obviously phenomenal. If that was a running back, it would be like far and away the best in the NFL. Because around 4.5 is pretty good for a back. So now if you have Fields getting 45, 50 rush yards a game, and he's getting it at a 6 yard per average clip, that is going to just bump up over 17 games. That is really going to increase both your rushing volume and your rushing efficiency. And if your running backs are averaging 4.3, when your quarterback is averaging 6, as a team, you're going to be up in the high 4s. So be a top 5 rushing team. All right. Number 5, bounce backs on defense and special teams. Again, I'm trying to pull from places that it's not a big reach. It's not a big reach to say, hey, Quinn Williams, 2 years ago, you were a second team All-Pro. You're not old. You're still Quinn Williams. Can you be a second team All-Pro again? Sauce Gardner, you were 2 out of your first 3 seasons, you were a first team All-Pro. Can you be a first team All-Pro again? Quincy Williams, you were a first team All-Pro 2 years ago. I think you just turned 29. So kind of getting there, but still not old. Can you be a top 5 off-ball linebacker in the NFL again? Even if it's just a regret, even if it's just like Sauce gets second team All-Pro, Quincy gets second team All-Pro, they meet in the middle of 2023 and 2024. That's a big step up. Michael Carter, can your back not be broken? That's a huge, huge step up. And Jermaine, yeah, Jermaine, we may not get 100% Jermaine Johnson, probably won't, but we only had him for 1.5 games last year. So anything we get out of Jermaine is going to be more than what we got last year. Yeah, man. So those bounce backs on defense, those are, I mean, that's what, 5 players. It's almost half your starters. If they can really bounce back, it's gonna have a trickle effect across your entire defense. And then the special teams is really just the kicker, man. Like Nick Folk to Greg Z. The Jets had a bottom 3 kicking situation last year. Maybe Nick Folk isn't leading the league in kick make percentage like he has the last 2 seasons, but if he can be an above average kicker, that's going to be a 1 or 2 game swing right there. And then finally, can Mason Taylor be a top 15 tight end right away? That doesn't mean if he isn't that he's a bust, but if you're asking for my perfect storm, the Jets are going to need some high impact play out of Taylor right away. If you look at the weapons on this offense, wide receiver 2, Justin Fields' offense isn't necessarily the end all be all if you don't have one of those, but you need a good tight end. And I think we got one. Like I think he's going to be good right away. So to run what they want to run, can Mason Taylor get you 500 yards and a couple of touchdowns and be a reliable target on third down? So when teams are stacking the box and bracketing Garrett Wilson, that's what they're going to do. I mean, if you're playing the Jets, what are you going to do? You're going to say, we are going to make a non-Garrett Wilson. We're going to make Justin Fields throw the ball to somebody not named Garrett Wilson. And if they beat us, so be it. That's what I would do if I was facing the Jets. And I think the guy I'm most confident could do it, because Breece, it's tough. Like at the end of the day, you're coming out of the backfield, it's different. The one guy who I think has the best chance is Mason Taylor. So him popping right away would be a huge, huge game changer. And finally, number 7, 7%. If the Jets offense can get their sack percentage to around 7%, even under 8 in the 7 point something, this offense has a chance, man. Because if Justin Fields' stats stay the exact same over his last 17 games, if all of his stats stay the same, but if he decreases that sack percentage, and obviously he needs help from the coach, the defensive line, the receivers, he holds responsibility for it. It's everybody's job to go. If that goes from 11.5% to 7.5% over the course of 17 games, that's the game changer right there. That's the key stat I'm looking at with this offense, because everything else, 47 rush yards per game, 2-to-1 touchdowns picks, 7.0 yards per attempt, 63.9, whatever, completed percentage. It's livable. It's livable through the lens of him being a top 5 rushing quarterback. That's sack rate, man. Get it to 7 point something, and this offense definitely has a fighting chance. And if all those things happen, I would predict the Jets to make the playoffs. If 4 or 5 of them happen, they have a chance. And we'll talk about soon.